Ohio State already clearly has the loss to Oregon, but Indiana is undefeated and finally facing Joe, I'm just going to call it what it is, a comparable and capable opponent here in Ohio State. I kick it over to you, man. How do you see this game playing out?
First of all, you mentioned the line for this game is pretty wide. 12 points is where the spread is currently sitting. I don't think that this game is going to be a blowout. I don't think that this game is going to be widely in favor of Ohio State. But to be very clear and to get ahead of as we start to unpack this game, Blake, it shouldn't be a hot take to say that Ohio State's going to win this football game. They are the more talented team on paper. They are the more talented team on film. They've got more draft prospects. They are built to come into this game and win it confidently. Does not mean that they're going to beat them by 20 points. Does it mean they beat them by 7-10? Absolutely. What we know that this Ohio State team has done in all of their successes since that Oregon loss is they've run the ball really freaking well. They've thrown the ball all over the field and at a consistent clip. Will Howard is at that 73% completion percentage on the year with 24 touchdowns and only 5 interceptions. And they're playing phenomenal defense like we knew that they were going to do, with great play at every single position group, with, again, future NFL players all over this roster. I give Indiana a shot to keep this thing close because their offensive line has been one of the best in the country, and they have played together very consistently. Their run game has been very steady, and Curtis Work has been a great decision maker, even in some of his weaker performances. So that's what I said on this, Blake. I'm curious to see where you're going to take this, but I don't think that this game is going to be truly lopsided like many people want it to be.
I can't. I barely could get through that, you saying that, because let me say this. Here is where I am. I saw you face a very physical football team in Michigan. Michigan is flawed in a lot of different positions and all over the place. And, Joe, you couldn't establish a running game. You were mistiming on throws. Physically, I thought, even in a loss, from top to bottom, Michigan was more physical than Indiana was. Now, the thing that's interesting there is that, well, Blake, Oregon's coming off a 3-point win against Wisconsin. How do you judge them versus us in Indiana? But, Joe, I've seen Oregon already get tested, right? Like, meaning I've seen Oregon go up against Ohio State and win. I look at Indiana and say, Joe, I don't know if it's fair for me to look at a team like Ohio State and Indiana and say to myself, hey, the team that gave you the most problems was the team that had the best blue chip ratio. And what I mean by that is not actually the blue chip ratio, but just in meaning that had the best talent on the field. They don't have it. They don't have a solution at quarterback. They're having to put in a walk-on at quarterback. We all know the issues for them offensively. But, Joe, when I go back and watch the Michigan game today, and I'm like, man, you just can't get away with this stuff against Ohio State, and they're not going to be able to. Joe, the big thing for me is you talked about their offensive line being good. Yeah, but being good against whomst is the problem that I'm having here. And the problem that I have here is I think that more than anything, they're going to have massive issues on the lines of scrimmage. This is how I feel about Indiana at the current moment. I feel like because they are coming out of nowhere, so to speak, because Indiana is not one of these teams that we constantly see with 9, 10, 11 wins every year. We do this with everybody. We want them to be good. But then when reality sets in and they got to face teams that have a really good line of scrimmage, what do? What happens? They get abused. You're not going to convince me right now on a Monday that Ohio State is not going to be able to implore some of the same physicality that Michigan did against Indiana. It's not a logical thought.
Okay, wait, stop. I didn't say that. And I didn't say that they were going to step up and match their physicality. That's not what's being said here.
But they would have to some extent if you're calling it a 7 to 10 point game. See, in reality of what I heard you say is if you say 7 to 10 points, okay, the way that I perceive that is the simple nature that, hey, does Ohio State got the ball last and they go down and score? Because that's a 7-point game. So when you say it like that, they would have to meet that physicality. So if I'm misunderstanding what you're saying here, and you're saying it's only a 7-point game. I don't see that.
I think you're reading into what I'm saying a little bit too deeply, and you're making an assumption off of what I'm saying.
Say that it was going to be a 7 to 10 point game.
But you're making an assumption off of what. Okay. Ohio State also
about assuming.
Ohio State also has a game on their schedule where they got out physical by a team right now that's struggling. And that's Nebraska. They could not run the football. And I know that was at the very beginning of their offensive line issues. I don't think that that's indicative of how Ohio State plays in this game. I'm bringing that up to say that no team is perfect in their performances on a week-to-week basis. Indiana played their worst game against Michigan, against a team that does have two dominant and elite defensive tackles in Mason Graham and Kenneth Grant that are going to go on to be top 50 NFL draft picks. I'm saying this to say that Michigan, yes, their quarterback situation is a shit show. Their offense is a mess. That does not mean that Indiana comes out and wins this game because they played Michigan close. I'm only just trying to point out that was a tough battle, and that as bad as this Michigan team is, it's still a test so far this season. I feel like we're just quick to assume that just because Michigan's bad, that's not a difficult matchup for Indiana. Teams all throughout the year have been slipping up against lesser opponents and still finding ways to win. But because it's Indiana, we don't want to give them credit for it.
In those instances, those other teams also have situations where they went up against opponents that are either ranked or more high-level opponents than what Indiana did. Indiana is the only team in the top 10 that hasn't faced a team with a winning record yet. You talk about Ohio State, I'm like, well, they lost by 1 against Oregon on the road. That's as splitting hairs as you can get. That's literally me coming in here and saying the team that has home field advantage is going to win. And quite honestly, it's pretty much what it came down to in the end here. When I look, Joe, when I look at Indiana, I think that they are much better, clearly, in every single facet since Curt Cignetti got there. But I can't get out of my head that when I see that Michigan game, I'm like, where's the other opponents that can match this kind of physicality and toughness? That's where I'm at. Now, here's something that's interesting. You know what the other thought that I have in here, though, is Ryan Day in these top flight, high-ranked games constantly finds ways to wee-wee down his leg. And yeah, I say wee-wee for all you people who are French and love watching college football. Does that worry you any here? Does the stigma of Ryan Day facing top 5 opponents worry you at all?
No, because, again, admittedly, this is not your typical top 5 opponent. I think Indiana being moved up to – look, and I've never said this. I've never said that Indiana should be a top 5 team. I think that we've gotten ahead of ourselves, and I think that the AP has gotten ahead of themselves. They weren't even in my top 10 in my power rankings. So I don't think this is the same as that typical matchup. I think this is slightly a manufactured ranking, where I think having this conversation about this matchup gets really frustrating is that reality has separated between our expectations for Indiana from those that don't totally know what they're watching. Like the AP voters, just the general college football fans that are really, really going out of their minds in propping up Indiana. Though, to stay back with what we're talking about here with this Indiana squad, I get what you're trying to bring up with how, yes, the first time that you played against a physical squad, that game ends up being closer and you don't have that same level.
You ran for 40 yards.
This would be a different situation if they were doing what BYU was doing every single week.
Joe, BYU is, Joe, in fairness, they're facing opponents with winning records. They faced SMU. Regardless if you want to take BYU out of it or not, again. All right.
Wait. Okay.
You know what? Okay.
It's more. Oh, wait. It is more elaborate than just saying that, though. They are at the top. It's not more elaborate. Yes, it is, because they're at the tops of most offensive and defensive statistical categories. They're not just winning by large margins. They're dominating in every area of the field. I'm not trying to make the case for Indiana as the number 1 team in the country, which is what's going to get misjudged by this conversation for what people are probably going to comment on this video. But when you are this freaking dominant and you are this explosive, it at least translates to something. The same crap happened last year with Michigan until they played Penn State. The same exact thing happened.
Different beast, Joe.
I'm not comparing them to Michigan, but all I'm trying to say here, though, is that just because they're not playing anybody does not mean that we have to completely drop them down and say that they suck and they're completely overrated. I
never said that they suck. I never called them overrated. But when you
wait, hold on. The way that you're talking about them implies that you're saying that they're overrated because you're saying that they're not going to be that rated.
I think they're overrated compared to what the AP poll has them in. Yeah, I do. So, and you just admitted to that earlier.
Yeah, they should be at 10. They should probably
so then you admitted that they were overrated your damn self. So don't label me saying they're overrated when you did it too. Joe, they had 40 rushing yards. They were top 5 rushing offense before they played Michigan. And I'm supposed to come out here in good conscience and good faith and saying, hey, you haven't faced an opponent this year with a winning record. Now you want me to come out here and say that a team that's better than Michigan, that a team that, quite honestly, Joe, is really, really good at stopping you through the air, a team that is physical in their front seven, a team that's more physical than Michigan in their front seven. Oh, and by the way, I know that Ohio State has issues along their offensive line, but when they went up against Penn State, they were still able to run the football against a really decent front seven in their own right. Then I look at Indiana's run defense. Joe, they were in the rushing offense, and I look at them through the first or last couple of weeks. When they face tough opponents, they've been stuffed. And when I look at Curtis Rourke in this wide receiver room, I know that they're explosive. I know that they've been making plays. But when Ohio State makes you one-dimensional, I don't know if you have the dudes on the outside that can beat dudes that Ohio State has one-on-one. I don't. So when I look, I'm taking them to cover and I'm taking them to win, meaning Ohio State. This is going to be a different beast in one position group, and that's the line of scrimmage. The big boys are going to set the tone in this game, and I'm telling you, listen to your boy. This is going to – Joe, Ohio State's going to come out and they're going to run this football, and they're going to establish it. And I understand that Indiana is the number 1 rush defense in the country. I get that. Watch what's going to happen here. This is the best team top to bottom clearly. Let me be careful here. From an athlete-to-athlete standpoint that the Big Ten can give us.
Wait, say that again? Wait, say that last part again.
From athlete per athlete, I think that Ohio State is the best that the Big Ten has to offer.
Oh, yes. That's not a debate. That's not a debate.
That's why I was like, why do you want me to repeat that? But
I just didn't hear what you said.
Here's another thing. Joe, I look at Davis Warren as an example from a couple of weeks ago. Davis Warren did go 50% for 137 yards. If you go back and watch the game, and he actually wasn't technically bad in some situations. They're about to light this secondary up too. Jeremiah Smith, ding, 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 ding.
Okay,
ding,
so
ding.
This is where I get completely off track here because, again, if this was an Indiana team that had multiple slip-up opportunities, if this was like TCU a couple of years ago, like if I was trying to make the argument, but they were still scraping by in a couple of games, and they were extremely lucky in a lot of situations. They didn't do anything that was like super, super exceptional. Quentin Johnston was great. Max Duggan made a lot of good plays. And I love using BYU as an example because BYU is so middle of the pack in every single statistical category, and they don't have any premier NFL athletes that are going to be picked anywhere in the top 100 of the upcoming draft. Indiana does have quality players on this team. And again, their production that they have on both sides of the football shows up. I don't think that you mentioned that they had that outside of that Michigan game that they had games where they didn't run the ball that well. That's not true.
Yeah,
that's not true.
No, Washington. The second most physical team.
That was when Washington, when they played with a backup quarterback that knew that they were going to have to overly rely on their run game.
Okay. But that's my point though. You ran for 188, and I get that. But that's basically your offense. You're running the ball at will over and over and over again. And, okay, you're going to run the ball 50 times. You better have more than 188 yards. I'm sorry, you better.
I just don't like this assumption that you think that this is going to be a cakewalk, that they're just going to blow past them. Could this game get lopsided? Absolutely. Am I picking Ohio State? Yes, I am picking Ohio State before anybody gets pissed at me in the comments. But my point that I'm trying to make is that Indiana has played very dominant football to this point and has put on film a capability to play this game close and competitively. But like, what did Penn State do coming into the week against Ohio State to say that they were worthy of playing Penn State playing Ohio State close? They didn't play anybody coming into that game.
You know what they did? They constantly brought in top 7 or top 10 recruiting classes. I know based off of what I saw the year before with those same athletes, okay, against these tough opponents, that they can play. So don't tell me that
there's plenty of teams that have good recruits that don't play well in college football. So that I don't think that's paints the picture.
Are you legitimately asking me, who?
Penn State didn't play anybody until they played Ohio State.
Is Bill Carter going to go in the first round?
Yes, he's going to.
Okay, how do I know that?
Because the draft.
Thank you for making my argument.
Wait, but hold on. Michael Kamara and number of these players within their secondary. Michael Kamara is one of the top sack getters in the country right now. So again, it's not like they've just got a bunch of random dudes out there. You've got a guy who is leading the country as one of the best sack getters. Jalen Walker has 6 pass breakups on the year. They have one of the most productive secondaries in the country. Like they are a quality team that you're making it seem like they're a bottom tier team in the conference. And I think that that's just crazy.
You know why? Because again, I look at the teams that they're playing in the Big Ten. I don't know how else to get this through to you.
I just think that is not fair to do because they can't control who they're playing and they're kicking the crap at everybody.
I never said when it comes down to resume and playoff, that's one thing. I don't blame them on who they're playing. I don't. But at the same time, when I have a team in Michigan that is that physical, and Joe, you're getting beat up. Let's call it what it is. They were getting beat up at the line of scrimmage. Now I got a better team that can do that better.
Again, I'm not saying that Indiana wins the football game.
Joe, they're going to win.
That's not what I'm saying.
You better get ready for it.
I will take Indiana to cover gladly. I will gladly take that money.
Okay, well, let's put a little money on it. How much money you want to put on it?
Well, we'll settle that off air.
No, I want to settle it on air. So
how much do you want to put on it?
How about a Happy Meal?
Sure, let's do a Happy Meal.
Well, I mean, you say that, but I have 2 kids, and a Happy Meal is like $20, bud.
I'm fine putting $20 down on that.
All right. You better be glad I'm not asking you for a whole bottle of whiskey here, which I owe you a bottle of whiskey, but you're going to owe me a bottle. So it evens itself out of here.
BetOnline remains your top spot for all of your live betting action and contests. NFL, college football, UFC, NHL are all in full swing. BetOnline is your #1 source for wagering news, odds, trends, and predictions with both desktop and mobile access at any time. Head to BetOnline today and use promo code BELIEVE, that's BLEAV, for 50% off your first deposit. That is a 50% welcome bonus. BetOnline, where the game starts.